Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Now, as you know, we've looked at a number of health systems on this show, and we're all very interested in keeping ourselves 100% healthy. And on the show, we've had some very unusual or perhaps unknown ways of treating each other. And frequency has been something that's been mentioned many, many times. Raising our vibrations, keeping positive, and all of that. And of course, frequency, these radio waves that can affect the body in lots of different ways that can cure physical aspects. But what about the mental side of things? Can frequency also help clear your mind and keep you in a positive vibrational state that will clear out all the sort of worries and moans and, I don't know, gremlins in the brain? Well, today I've got Derek Pell, who is coming on the show. He is an engineer, so he's looking at this from not so much as a medical practitioner's point of view, but very much from an engineer constructing these machines and knows all about frequency. Derek, welcome to the show. It's lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you, Richard. It's lovely to be here.
Now, I know that you're not a medical practitioner, and so you're not so much coming from that neck of the woods, as it were, but you're very much from the engineering and building frequency machines. So that's what we're going to explore today, and I know you've got some slides which we're going to have a look at as well. Because, I mean, there's certainly a lot that I don't understand, and I'm sure it's the same with the audience, that we're so used to going to GPs and having pills for all sorts of things, including our mental state. So shall we start just with frequency then? And how does frequencies change us?
Well, I think I'm not exactly sure how it works. I mean, when I set out to build this machine, I was really just exploring a theory which had come off the back of reading a book. And that's kind of why I did the slideshow, because it gives a nice introduction to where I'm coming from.
Right. Okay.
Now, I would suggest that if you were to look at us from a perspective of hubbing up auras, there are several. We have this aura which kind of like surrounds our body. Now, I know as our aura comes out of our head, say for example, there is effectively a channel which goes down through the aura, and I think possibly comes out the other side, maybe somewhere along the lines of like our base chakra, that kind of thing. So what I would suggest is that probably these frequencies are interacting with our electromagnetic fields that are naturally produced with our bodies. And I would say it's working very much on a quantum level, like, for example, quantum entanglement. And I know that I listened to your talk with the chap who did the speaking to, and I believe I'm right in saying that he was saying a very similar thing, that this is working on the quantum level. So I'm not exactly sure how it works, but from tests that I've done so far, from exploring it, there is definitely something working, there is something going on, and it would seem to be something beneficial as well, depending on the frequencies that you are actually emitting for someone to experience. I mean, obviously, if you're going to give them bad vibes, I would suggest they're going to have bad results. But if you're going to give them good vibes, then you expect good results. And I think it's the same with every technology, really. It's how you use it. I mean, all technology can be used for the benefit of mankind, but often it is used to the detriment of it, like all the agenda type technology, which is constantly we're being pushed on us. So I would say with all technology, there's a good side and there's a dark side.
Absolutely. So, well, you've got a slide show to present. Shall we go through some of that and have a look at what you're what you're
Absolutely.
talking about.
Let's do that.
So here we go. I've got the first slide up there.
Yeah. So
For me,
I think at this stage I'd normally just introduce myself. So I think we can just roll past this slide and go to the first one. So this is Laurie Ladd's Divine Design, and I read this just over a year ago. And this is a very interesting book. It's basically about the design of the Earth. I believe it was designed as a 5D experience originally. And also, it's about the design of man and man's and the Earth's journey throughout history. Um, it is basically what the book's about, and it talks about an awful lot of topics. One of the things I draw your attention to is the 5D, 4D, and 3D human experiences
mm,
there, because I will come back to those because this is an area which is very interesting. But basically, this is talking about the fifth dimension, the fourth dimension, the third dimension, and those are bands of frequency. So I will come back to that. But the book itself has this underlying theme of energy and frequency. And um, basically, everything around us is energy. And
mm,
it is the frequency which this energy is vibrating at, which gives us all these wonderful materials that, makes these things like our tables and our chairs feel solid, when in fact, if you were to examine them on a molecular level, they're mostly open space. So
is it a case that really the vibration is going at these different frequencies so fast that to us they appear solid? So
exactly,
so the cup like this is
exactly,
solid.
and if I would suggest that if everything stopped vibrating in that cup, it would probably just disintegrate to powder or something like that. I mean, I don't really know what would happen, because the point
Right.
is, it never does happen. We've never really seen it. But everything is energy. If you go to the next slide, Richard.
Yeah. Bear with me.
So, what, of course, this has actually been proved to us in a number of ways, and perhaps the most significant way is by Einstein's famous equation where E equals mc squared, where E is energy, m is the mass of an object, the c is the speed of light. Next slide. And also, Nicholas Tesla said that if you wish to understand the universe, then think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So this is basically telling us that everything is energy vibrating at a given frequency. And when you begin to look at things like that, it becomes quite obvious that these are very very important properties that can be manipulated.
Yes.
But
And will have an effect on us.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Mm.
So if you go to the next slide. So another thing that the Laurie Ladd book talks about is our frequencies, the frequencies that we vibrate on with regard to our emotions.
Yes.
So all of our emotional states have a vibrational frequency. So I wanted to know what those frequencies are. And indeed, being an engineer, I wanted to know what all of these frequencies are, not just our emotions. What are these 5D and 3D frequencies as well? But coming to the slide here, this is an emotional frequency map. So this gives us our frequencies, or rather our emotions, in ascending order, as in line with the frequencies as well. And what it also says is that these frequencies are the frequency at which the energy is vibrating at. And also, just note on there that all of these frequencies are actually on the audio spectrum as well. I'm just going to get this. I'm just going to get this presentation up on my screen here. So I started to wonder if this could be flipped on its head, as it were. Could, for example, I put out the frequency and have it affect someone's emotional state, or to cause some kind of a shift to enable you to raise their vibration by using frequency. So that is what I set out to prove with my machine, just by turning it around and saying, okay, if all of these emotions give off a certain frequency, can I then use that frequency to basically, cause someone to have some kind of a shift in their outlook?
So, I mean, in your slide, just looking at that, okay.
Yeah.
So these are all, as you say, up there. I hope people can see it, but they're all different emotions. From, you've got fear in there, of course, which we know recently has been used on us, right up to things like joy, love, and all those sort of things.
Yeah.
Some people find it difficult to sort of maintain, shall we say, more happy type frequencies.
Indeed,
and,
yes.
And often, you walk into perhaps the office in the morning and everyone's looking gloomy and you think, oh God, I wonder what's going on here.
Yeah.
And it may have been the boss has said you've all got to stay late, or you're all having a pay decrease this month because you've all got the sack. Or you may walk in and it may be a joyous occasion. Can the frequency then, by having a machine, say you're feeling just a bit down, it's like, if I feel a bit down, I might go for a walk down to the seafront, reset myself, as it were. But are you saying that then with a frequency machine, if you've got a little gadget, and I'm just using my television changer here for the studio, that you could sort of go, oh, I'm feeling a bit miserable, cheer me up, and press a button, and it sort of gives you, oh, I feel so much happier. I no longer need to sort of get at the end of a noose today.
Yeah, it could well work that way. What I would say is I need to be able to test this further, and this is what I'm looking to be able to do, to build a machine which I can easily reproduce. Now we'll come to that in the slides in a moment.
Okay.
So that more can be done. I mean, what I would suggest is that if someone has got, say someone's going to work and they don't like their job. Now, I think we can both agree that while they're in that environment and they've got to do that job, they're not necessarily going to like it. But say, for example, when they come out of work, if they can go home and then put that machine on in their home environment, that could provide a shift, a boost, which allows them to move past that and concentrate on the evening instead of what they've been doing all day.
Yes. So I suppose what you're saying is very, very often we take the emotions of the day or from an experience, and we can't immediately shift it. So to be able to sort of press a button and go, oh, I feel so low, press that, actually I feel now so great. And in those times where you haven't got to be in environments you don't want to be in, you can thrive more.
Yeah. I think of it as some kind of a rejuvenation, being able to move on for that. Because let's face it, once you've done the day's work, the last thing you want to be doing is carrying it home with you,
Yes.
It's done, it's at least done with until the next day,
And I suppose the same is if you've had an argument with somebody, or you've bumped into somebody or you've had a bit of road rage, or someone's cut you up, those sort of things where you're going and you're just feeling tense, and you might not be a kickboxer or a footballer to get it out. You're just sort of going, oh, I've got to go. I'm going out to dinner with a friend and I'm in the wrong mood, so I just need to sort of like reset yourself, or raise yourself up.
Exactly. So you're looking at something that can lift you out of that state into a higher vibration, so you can get on with life, with what's important whatever is important at that time.
And does anything like that exist already? I mean, other than walking in the countryside and people doing meditations and that, but in terms of a frequency machine?
There is a system called the EE system. It's by Dr. Sandra Michael Rose. And this is a machine which emits frequency through light panels.
Right.
And I would say it does work similar to mine. I mean, I'm not using lot, although I am using something on the radio frequency spectrum, which is actually light on a different part of the spectrum that which we can't see with our eyes, you know. But
Yes.
but nevertheless, I would suggest that this machine is working in similar ways, putting out frequencies for people to experience to create a healing environment.
Yes.
The drawback with this machine is it is very expensive, and it's really only available to practitioners who have got clinics and are looking to have people come in and experience some time with this machine, depending on what particular issues they have. And
Right.
it can help things. It can help elevate your mood, increase focus. It's supposed to help with sleep, mental outlook, all those kinds of things. So
the machine that you are aiming or you're researching to build would be a much more smaller, portable, cheaper thing that people could buy and just have without having to go to practitioners.
I'm looking to build, I think, probably at least 2 machines. Now, one, I would be looking to build a high-end machine, which is what I'm working on now, to put into the hands of practitioners. I mean, it would definitely be a lot cheaper than this system that I'm speaking of, because this one, I've looked on their website, and you're talking about $28,000 for a 4-element machine. Now,
but I guess the restriction there is that people would have to go to whoever's got the machine.
Exactly, and like an hour at a time or something, and perhaps sit in the room and read a magazine while they get.
So is it possible to make these machines smaller and cheaper so that effectively it's like having a phone?
Yeah, well, one of the ways that I'm looking at doing it is through radio frequency. Now, the current machine that I'm working on, I'm looking at having 3 channels, which 2 vibrational channels and a radio frequency channel. Now, if I was to do one for the home, I would probably look to do one with either 1 or 2 channels on a radio frequency, which should be a lot cheaper to reproduce because you don't have to make these vibrational cabinets, which I will show you when we get to those.
Right. Okay. Just one before we proceed with all of this. A lot of people are worried, and we know that there's a lot of radio frequencies and EMFs, 5G, and all of this stuff. And ultimately, people are saying we don't want any of this. So, would more radio frequencies really be beneficial? Would that be messing us up more?
I think it very much depends on the frequency. I mean, the thing about 5G, and I'm not totally convinced that 5G is harmful for us, but the thing about 5G is it's so far up the frequency band that it's in the microwave. I mean, it's like if you can imagine putting yourself in a microwave and then turn it on, sort of cook to whatever temperature or whatever, you're zapping yourself with that.
Nobody wants that, clearly. I mean, nobody wants
whereas I'm looking at using much lower frequencies within the megahertz range. I mean, I'm actually looking at 27 megahertz because I can then buy in antennas which are ready made, which would be a nice way of executing this.
Right. And is that a good? Is that a friendly frequency?
It's certainly a lot more friendly, I would say, because if you think in terms of radio communications, we have thousands and thousands of communication radio waves going through the air all the time, and these are all lower frequencies. People using like ham radios, even the police frequencies, for example, or the fire brigade. they're all using much lower frequencies, which are in the order of, say, several hundred megahertz rather than several hundred gigahertz. So you're in a completely different part of the band. And I mean, for example, if you're going to go and buy a microwave, for example, you're not going to buy a microwave which is using frequency in the megahertz range. It's going to be in the gigahertz range. So we're really looking at the speed at which it's exciting the atoms in the air, if you say. It's a lot slower, so it doesn't create so much friction, because the reason the microwaves create the heat inside of the object is it's literally shuffling up all the molecules so fast. It's creating a lot more friction, whereas on a lower frequency, it's not going to be creating so much friction of all these atoms being vibrated.
Right.
So
Well, let's press on with the
let's
stuff,
do
because
that.
I'm itching to see how it can help us. So we were there. Shall we move on to the next
Let's
slide?
move on to the next slide, because I think this is going to answer some questions as well.
Okay, so here we go.
So I actually got this frequency map off of Chris Fall's channel. He's a YouTuber, and I would suggest if you're interested in this particular slide, I would try watching some of his videos on YouTube. But he uses this, I think it's pronounced Mindo Damalus map of spirituality. But this is a frequency map that I came across when I was building my machine, and I was immediately drawn to it because, of course, it starts off like my frequency map, but then it expands into a much wider band of frequencies, and it kind of goes more into a spiritual domain. And if we think about how our lives have been kind of designed, in the world, we're very much told to focus on the external things around us. Like, I might say, I'm an engineer, I like such and such films on TV or whatever. So, everything that we talk about is kind of the external. We never really get told to focus on the internal side, what's going on internally. So if we look up this frequency chart, you can see when it goes past acceptance, and then you've got inner light, you've got inner wisdom, inner love, oneness, presence, and so forth. This is all looking inwards. So,
Yes.
If everyone could, for example, concentrate on the internal things that are going on inside of us, then, I mean, this is the reason why we meditate, why we say, for example, well, one of the things I do is mediumship and psychic work, that kind of thing. So we always meditate. So, we have to sort of raise our vibration to be able to look internally. Now, the interesting thing about this chart is if you see on there, well, first of all, just look at the way it's labelled in the boundaries. Like you've got the self-realization, the self-empowerment, victim abuse consciousness. You've got the heaven, the paradise, the in-between, the purgatory, and the hell. Now, I've actually labelled a part on there called the matrix as well. And also, if I draw your attention to the fifth dimension, the fourth dimension, and the third dimension, this is the 3D, the 4D, and the 3D human experiences that Laurie Ladd is talking about in her book, The Divine Design. So this is actually giving you those frequency boundaries. So if we, as truth seekers, we often talk about the matrix, but no one ever really tells us what this matrix is. So I would suggest that this matrix is actually a frequency band, or rather it's a sub-frequency band, because if you look at that chart and you put it back up on screen a moment. If you imagine that is the totality of what we can experience as human beings, Yet everything around us, like the government and the media and so forth, they're all looking to confine us inside this matrix space, this fourth and 3D. And really, they want to get you pushed down as tight into that 3D section as possible. I mean, just cast your mind back to COVID or I should say coronavirus or whatever, and just think of the fear. And you can just see the media's job was to really push everyone tightly down into that lower triangle as far as they can. So they're literally keeping us in a box.
Yes.
And it's interesting actually because I was listening to your show the other day, and you had a guy on talking about history, and
Yes.
was saying how so much history is falsified. And he actually said, I mean, obviously this is all about control, keeping us in this matrix frequency, if you like. And he actually said the only one they can control us is by giving us this false reality. And
Yes.
this is exactly what they've done to limit our frequency bandwidth, if you like, and this is how they are effectively controlling us
Right.
by keeping us within limited in what we can experience.
Yes.
Um,
Okay. Shall we move on? I'm just anxious of time. That was all.
Absolutely, yeah. So if we move on, next slide. Okay, great. So this is the first frequency machine I built, and this is really just a test bed to test the theory as to will these frequencies affect people if when they experience them. So, and bearing in mind that when I started this project, it was really just a theory. I never knew anything about the Rife machines or anything like that. I didn't know about the Spooky 2, the EE system. So really, I just set about making something that could produce these frequencies and transmit them to people, so to see if they would experience them in some way.
So
So
can I just let me just interrupt you just a little bit here to fully understand this, and I hope this might help other people as well. My dad, my dad used to make aerials for a living, not TV aerials, but all sorts of other aerials for for the marine industry, and he would always these were receiving aerials, not transmitting aerials, but I guess I don't know, it might be a similar thing. Some of them probably were transmitting because he was. Well, anyway, yes, some of them were transmitting because some of them were in the early days.
It's the same principle. Basically, if an antenna works for transmitting, it will work for receiving and turning. It's depending on the wavelength. It's important to get the wavelengths right, especially when you're transmitting.
Okay, so he made these aerials, and we would go out and test the effectiveness of these because he was designing them. People would come up with a problem and say to him, "Oh, we need an aerial on this bandwidth." And from what I understood, and it's a long time ago, you have your wave, you've got your bandwidth, which is between certain frequencies, and then there's this sort of carrier wave, and then the signal sits on top of the carrier wave, as I remember.
Yeah, that's correct, and that can be achieved in a few different ways, but yes, that's correct.
So in order to sort of get this idea of what frequencies are doing, the frequency is sending some sort of electronic pulse, is it? What is it? What actually is the frequency? Because people talk about this, and they talk about vibrations, and they talk about frequency, and it's very difficult to sort of fully. Well, for me, being somewhat thick, even though my dad was doing this sort of stuff on the receiving end, what is the frequency itself? What is it? Is it an electrical signal that is radiating from
a frequency in terms of radio waves? I mean, first of all, you would have your carrier wave. Now, that's just a sinusoidal waveform. So if you can imagine, it's kind of going up and down like this.
And is it? I mean, I know it's shown like that on an oscilloscope, But is that actually what it's doing when it leaves the aerial, the transmitter? Is it
Indeed,
actually
yeah, yes, it is. Now, how they get information on that is they encode another waveform on top of it. Think of it as superimposing it, for example. Now,
right?
they can do this by altering the amplitude. So if you alter the amplitude of the wave, the frequency stays the same, but the actual amplitude could be altered. Now
Is that's the size of the sine wave?
yeah, exactly. The amount it
So the
goes up and
amplitude
down.
goes bigger,
Yeah,
but the but
or it contracts. Yeah.
right, but the
So,
frequency is the same.
yeah, so that's called amplitude modulation. Now, another way they can encode modulation onto a frequency is to actually vary the frequency. So if you imagine you've got a center frequency, which is there, but you can vary the frequency either side of that depending on the modulation, and that's called frequency modulation.
Right.
But there are also the other ones. There's sideband modulations, which are becoming more complex.
So the frequency modulation, is that FM, as in FM radio?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but and
Yeah.
people are so just to. I mean, I just wanted to try and get that because we're used to having FM radio, AM radio,
Yeah.
and people aren't having their heads exploded by it. You know, they'll tune into their favourite radio station if they've got any good radio stations these days, and it's following. So it's all over the place. But the frequency itself is a. I'm just trying to sort of pin that down. It's it's a beam of something, or it's just something agitating the atoms in the sky?
It's electromagnetism. So
Right.
Okay, let's think about this for a moment, right? If we've got a coiled wire and we use an iron rod and we wrap a coiled wire around that and we put a battery on it using a DC voltage, a direct current, we've got an electromagnet.
Right. And that is sending out waves that attracts a certain metal thing.
It's producing a constant current, and it's basically it will magnetize the metal. Now, I believe I'm right in saying that when you use non-ferrous metals, you really need an alternating current. I believe that's right, but
right. Okay.
But what you're basically doing is you're creating an electromagnet. Now, the higher, as you kind of go more towards radio frequencies, you kind of create this field which keeps radiating it. I guess it never really collapses. It just keeps radiating out and out until
does it loses power at some point? So it's kind of like a push.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on how good your antenna setup is. It depends on how much power you put out. I mean, I do actually use radio. I've got some sideband radios. Well, they're actually multi-mode radios, but they're sort of CB radios that can use the various different modes of communication. And,
yeah, sorry. I want to keep us back onto what you're doing and not get too sidetracked. But so just to understand the frequency thing, because I think it's important. Well, certainly for me to understand it, and the audience may well be going, "Richard, shut up." I'm sure they are. Are we effectively the aerials then that are receiving this frequency that you are generating from your machine?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So this is kind of what I thought. How are we as humans going to receive these signals? Because as I said to you a couple of slides back, that these frequencies I wanted to send are actually on the audio range. So if you were to connect say a certain vibration to an amplifier and then to a speaker, you're going to put out like a continuous tone. So obviously,
right.
I didn't want to be sending continuous tones to people because that would be more of an annoyance than something constructive. I wanted to be able to send these frequencies to them in a more subtle way that they wouldn't really have to be conscious of. I mean, certainly if they're using the machine, they're going to know it's on.
Yes.
but you don't want to be listening to a continuous tone.
So
So
is an analogy to what you're doing is like music raises your, if suddenly you put on a favorite
indeed,
tune
yes,
and you're down in the dumps
yeah.
and the tune comes on the radio, and it's not the radio waves at that point, it's the
It's
what
the vibration, yeah. Again, yes, it's something that's pleasing to the mind, something which we can all sing along to,
right.
or yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Um,
good. So let's progress, shall we?
yeah, let's put that slide back up. So what we've got here is we've got the machine which is able to drive these cabinets here. You can see that
Yeah.
I've got quite some big cabinets.
So they look like speakers.
They do, yes, indeed. They're actually vibrating cabinets, which
Right. Oh, okay.
vibrate at a high frequency. And I can either drive the cabinets or I can use a radio frequency, which is actually quite a low radio frequency. It's a couple hundred kilohertz, like the long wave, for example, or something like that. That's why the wire is really quite long. So I'm looking at improving using a higher frequency transmitter, as I said back several slides. So
Right.
I don't have to have a long aerial, but you know, or also I can put those pilot tones, the emotional tones, over a speaker as well. So that's really just for demonstration purposes. So that's what this machine can do, but it can only do one or the other. I can't run all of those modes of transmission together. This machine is actually quite limited in what it can do,
Okay.
and it's also a lot of connections on that board. It took a lot of hours to recreate that. So,
Yeah, I
but
imagine.
there's a lot to improve on. So
Right.
if we go to the next slide, then. Right, so this is a slide from when I gave my talk. So I gave my talk in February, and it was quite a scary talk to give because I really didn't know whether this machine was going to work on people or not. I knew it worked mechanically, but I didn't know as to what effect it would have on people. But
Nobody died, presumably.
yeah,
You're laughing there.
well,
I mean, you're messing about with people's minds here, Derek.
yeah, well, we did. I had tried it on myself, so I knew nothing bad was going to happen. But I mean, it was just the way you said it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we had about 15 or 16 people come backstage afterwards, and we had a little room out the back with all the equipment set up. And they sat down in chairs, and I played them. Well, I transmitted two frequencies in each session. It was either a frequency of courage or joy, and we tried using the cabinets, and we tried using the wire, and we tried a couple of different types of signal as well. And what we found was that on each occasion, we had people going around with dowsing rods. We had three people dowsing with either rods or a pendulum, and they were actually asking the participants if they'd received this transmission and if they were having some kind of a shift, an experience as to having received that. And almost on every occasion that when they tested, the dowsers were able to say that yes, they'd received it, and in some way they had assimilated that frequency and experienced some kind of a shift.
So just explain. You're giving people the frequencies. Why were they not? I don't understand what the dowsers were doing. Why could they not just have asked the people? Said, "Have you doing it? Do you feel a bit happier now?" Yes, thank you.
I wanted to eliminate as much subjectivity as possible. So
Right.
rather than have the people say that yes, I'm experiencing something, which did actually happen.
Yes.
I was
So how do the dowsers then? How does that? Because is that not a bit subjective?
Um, possibly it is, but are you aware of muscle testing, for example?
I have heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's I guess it's like a holistic treatment, but one of the things that I've been to quite a lot is to see kinesiologists, where they actually treat the body's electrical systems, if you like, and they use muscle testing. So this is very much getting information from the body, and with all my experience, I know that the body can give up this information if it's asked in the correct ways.
So are the dowsers or the pendulum people, are they the ones that are having it to them, or are they a separate people sort of testing?
They're asking the people that are sat on the chairs
Right. Oh,
the
okay.
frequencies. Now, indeed, the thousands are actually receiving them as well because they're in
Yes.
the field as the people who are sitting down. But I specifically asked them to see if they can detect whether these people are, the participants
Receiving.
are
And what was the answer?
um, almost in every case, they were able to detect that they were receiving the frequency and that there was some kind of shift, some kind of reaction to them having received it. And also, everyone was everyone was very upbeat, and they were saying that they could actually feel this. They were actually experiencing feeling it as well.
Right. Oh, well, that's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It was really more than I hoped for. I mean, I was actually erring on the side of caution, getting people to douse it rather than just have to say, "Oh yes, I can feel something,"
Yes.
So I wanted to make sure doubly, if you like.
Okay. I'm gonna have to push you on a bit here because time is ticking. So that was a successful experiment.
Indeed.
Should we move to the next slide?
If we go to the next slide. Now, here, what I did here was this was actually an on-stage demonstration which I did. But basically, we have a number of meridians around our body which are really distributing the energy around us. Now, one of the important ones is the central meridian down through the body there, as it is shown there. Now, this quite often goes out of balance, and it can go out of balance for a number of different reasons. But we actually use mobile phones to basically push it out of balance. And the idea.
Sorry to interrupt. Say that one more time. That our mobile phones push our central meridian out of balance.
Exactly. Yeah, they do. But like I say, it's not just mobile phones. It's anything. It can literally be any interaction that can unbalance you, if you like. But
right.
These meridians can also be put back into balance fairly easily as well. So what I wanted to do was to see if I could put a couple of electrodes on the system, and then basically just use the electrodes to put myself back into balance. Now, I had my kinesiologist come down, and she actually tested me to make sure I was out of balance. And then what I did was I just tucked these electrodes just inside the top of my trousers, which actually caused a bit of a giggle, amongst the audience. But the point is that I didn't let them touch my skin. So I was insulated from them. So it was purely the magnetic field. But we just put the universal love frequency through these electrodes, and that almost immediately balanced up my central meridian. And the kinesiologist was able to do a muscle test on me to say that meridian had indeed been balanced by using that electrode. So that was just a little demo. Well,
right, brilliant, yeah. And so I mean, that's very good for your health. Presumably, nobody wants their central meridian. Not that I'm 100% sure what the meridian is, but you don't want it out of balance.
No,
Exactly.
indeed, the
Brilliant.
more in balance we can be as
Yes.
humans, the better, because that helps all the energies around our body function
Y-
correctly as they should do.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So this is the new machine which I'm working on. This is just very much a simplified block diagram. But the idea is that I have a master CPU in control of three oscillators, so I can produce three different frequencies, and I can create more of a frequency environment with that. Now,
Right.
it's effectively like having, if you imagine you've got your stereo system at home, whereby you've got a left speaker and a right speaker, you've got channels. So I'm
Yes.
working on doing the same with that. So
And what? Um, why would you want several of them, different frequencies? Why would you not want just the top frequency to make everybody full of joy, or whatever the top one is?
yeah,
Right to the top, instead of giving them.
well,
Is,
the idea that I've got, you're aware of the healing frequencies like the 432 and the
mm,
528. So
yes.
what I'm thinking of doing is combining, say, for example, the universal love frequency of 500 hertz, along with the healing frequencies of, say, 432 and 528. So if I've got a three-channel system, which this will be, then I can have a blend of frequencies to create a healing environment. Now,
Right. Oh,
this
okay.
seems to be the same kind of line that this EE system was working on, because if you look at the I suggest you have a do a little research sometime and just type in the EE system, but you can see they're using different colours on these screens. So clearly they're putting out they're looking to create an environment rather than one solid frequency.
Right. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So I'm only asking idiot questions because I am an idiot. And it just seemed that the higher the frequency or the higher the vibration, the better you are. Why would you bother with all the lower ones if you? That was all I was thinking. But of course, maybe some of these frequencies, as you
Well,
just alluded to, have
I
different
think
purposes.
if you look at our energy fields, I mean we're quite a complex system. But
Yes.
I mean, if you were to look at our auras, for example, you see a variety of different colours. It's not just one static colour, for example.
Right.
So
So in other words, we need these different frequencies. Rather, it's not a question of just going. The better we are if we're at the top, it's a series of ones in a certain range rather
yeah,
than down at the bottom. Okay, I've got
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Sorry, I'm
yeah.
I'm rushing you for time. I do apologise.
Of course,
So can we
I
move
know
on
you've
to the
got
next
kids
one?
for an hour. Yeah. Okay. So this is I've had a number of circuit boards made out in China, so I actually had five made, basically keep
Right.
their minimum order. But what I've done for the new machine is rather than build it bit by bit, I've basically designed it using what I've learned from making the first one.
Yes.
So I've designed it and made a circuit board, and then I'm then going to populate this board as I go and get each part working. So this is
Yes.
where I am with at this stage, and
Okay.
we've got a display for the menu system. That's the big display. We've got a keyboard for using the for going down through menus and selecting various different functions.
Yes.
There's also another supply. I think if you just wind it on one slide, Richard, you can see there's another monitor there as well. So that's to help me get the other chips working, everything working in concert, if you like, because
Right.
this master chip on the top left here is controlling the other three chips. So I've basically
Brilliant.
got a monitor, so I can
Yeah.
that they're all going to run the same program, but each
Sure.
will know which chip it is
Well, that's yeah. Most people wouldn't really, understand all of that, but
Yeah,
at least you know how it works.
exactly. So that's what I'm looking to do there, and
Mm,
I'm getting I'm getting this system going at the moment.
of course.
Um,
So
so
you've got here potential application example. Give us an idea what we would use it for then.
right, so this is something that I've been looking at on the last presentation that I did when I was at Tisbury. So I'm sure you're aware that depression and anxiety is becoming more and more of a problem in our society.
Yes,
And
absolutely. The pressures that the government, for example, are putting on people and the pressure of
indeed,
trying to find financial resources to pay for things, absolutely. So if you're able to
indeed,
sort of
yeah.
deal with that,
So
short of giving everybody a ton of money to get out of debt,
which are never going to do, are they?
no.
But what they found was, I think pre coronavirus, the rates were around about 10% of people experiencing depression. Now, as soon as 2020 and 2021 came along, those levels basically went through the roof. They went up to around about 17%.
Right.
And since that whole situation has died down, it hasn't really got any better because, of course, we've literally had one thing after another, and
Yes.
this is indeed the age of anti-human agendas which are constantly being levelled at us,
Yes.
and we've obviously got this whole manufactured um, cost of living crisis to deal with,
So
and
your machine is going to is going to stop that depression and raise us up. Is that the idea?
I think it can certainly help. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, look, the whole point on the next two slides here. Um, in fact, if you go to the next one, let's have a look at the next one. So these are the amount of prescription items that are being prescribed to actually combat this problem we have.
Right.
And
And
as you can
it's an
see,
upward curve, isn't it? Yeah. More and
yeah,
more
yeah, but
people.
it's literally just increasing year on year, and
Yes.
I started looking at these figures, researching them, and I just thought, well, I mean, I guess this is managing the problem for people that are experiencing
But
depression.
it's
But
certainly not ideal for people to be
no,
taking
it's
prescription
not. I
drugs
mean,
because we
it's
know
not
that they also have a load of side effects as well, and
right.
anything that can
Yeah,
give us something that doesn't mean you've got to swallow more pills and have a prescription sounds great. So I'm just speeding this up because I need to bring this to an end.
mm.
But you're saying your machine basically could potentially, and machines like this, using
I think
frequencies,
so.
can combat
Particularly if
depression.
I can do one that can be used in the home, and there's
Right.
certainly a high-end one, and then people can kind of do like a top up at home. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, what I think is, I mean, obviously at this stage of the game, I'm not in a position to come out and say I've got the answer to all these problems. But what I would say is that I think it's time to have to try something different. And
Yeah. Well,
uh,
I do you know? I mean, I
this
think
would
we're in
work.
that position, aren't we, where people like yourself are building these sort of things and experimenting with this
Yeah,
technology that has been, perhaps people like Tesla has known about
yeah.
it and it's been hidden for the last 100 years.
It
Um,
has, and in actual fact, if you look at the work that Dr. Rice did, his full life's work was basically pulled apart by the Rockefeller Foundation, who just wanted to push big pharma, drugs, an example.
yes, because of
So
the financial rewards that they can get. You get
yeah,
more money by popping pills than
exactly. I mean, what's the point of curing someone if you can keep them sick and dependent on the medication and so forth? I mean, obviously that's a very cynical outlook, but
no, well,
unfortunately,
I think it's
it's
the
the truth.
correct outlook. I mean,
It's the
we've
truth.
seen it.
Yeah, yeah.
This,
We might as well be realistic about this, and
yes.
um, I think it's time for a new approach, or a new approach to be run in tandem with the existing approach. So what else? How can we go the extra mile to
Yes.
so everyone can benefit from this technology? Basically, is what I'm trying to achieve.
Well, Derek, listen, it's been absolutely fascinating. Sorry to sort of rush you through at the end there. But yes, and certainly I can tell from the different people that I've had on the channel, and all the different variations from bio resonance to the rife to all sorts of different
Yeah,
things, the different alternatives that people are looking for. Well done to you for pursuing this, and from an engineer explaining so that we can understand, or somebody is a simpleton like myself can understand frequency and how it can change us. There's a lot to learn. I think we're going to hear a lot more of this in
it
the
seems to be a
future.
growing sector. Yeah, I think a lot more people are now beginning to realise that all these drugs that we're literally getting hooked on, dependent.
Yes, they're just not good for us at
It
all.
might be managing a condition, but
We're not getting to
is
the
it really
source. And
helping? Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Listen, Derek, I'm going to have to draw this to an end. Thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us all about your machine. Do keep us updated when you've got something, or you're doing a bit more of a public demo and people can come along. That would be fantastic to
Yeah.
see. That would be wonderful.
Are you
So
able to display an email address? I'm very much looking to.
I'll put it in the description.
Yeah, that would be great. Because if anyone's interested, I'm very much looking to build a team and produce some kind of a business out of this going forward. So indeed, if anyone's sort of interested in exploring this with me, they're welcome to write to me.
Brilliant. Well, there you go. There's a challenge for the audience. If you're interested in teaming up with Derek and doing some experiments on frequency and seeing how it can go, I'll put his email in the description. But that's it for today. Big thanks to Derek for explaining all of that. I'll be back with more monologues and more wonderful guests. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Keep your frequencies and vibrations high. That's the only way that we're going to get through the strange times that we're living in.
Indeed.
So from Derek and
very strange times, yeah.
indeed, from Derek and I, thanks for watching.
Thank you, Richard.
Goodbye.